Hi, welcome to Singularity Training and welcome to this second video on the JHipster series. I made this video about Docker and Ubuntu, but for Windows and Mac it's really a simple install. There's not much to say, but I want to talk a little bit about why we're using Docker and where we go with that. So, we're using Docker and Ubuntu. Those two goes together very well because Ubuntu is Linux based and Docker is based to use the Linux kernel. So when you're using a Mac or a Windows machine, it creates a virtual machine for you inside Windows or inside the Macintosh. And the only thing that you need to do is maybe adjust a little bit the parameter to give more memory or more disk space to those machines. So apart from installing them, you won't have too much to do. It's a little bit more complex on Ubuntu. If you're used to working with server, it's quite easy, but I'll go through the process because a lot of people don't go through the full process, and as they stop before the end, they end up with something that's missing part. The reason why we're using Docker is that some components don't work in a standalone mode when we're doing development. So if we talk about Keycloak, if we talk about MongoDB, those components have to be run outside of your standard development environment. To run them, you will need some Dockers. You may need some Dockers also to inspect what Grafana and Prometheus does on your system. So in some case, you need them to validate things, and you may need them to validate if the Docker is built correctly before going in prod, or you may want to install them on a QA server or on a UAT server to do some testing. Let's go with that and check that right now. To get Docker, we'll go to the Docker site, of course, and there's a nice button, Get Started. From there, you can download your version for your OS. So if you're using Mac or Windows, you can go straight away, install them. It's either an installer or a package. You install it on your Mac or Windows. The only thing that you need to care is update the disk space or the memory if you're planning on using bigger Docker images or a lot of Docker images. Otherwise, it will be installed and DockerCompose will be installed too. DockerCompose is pretty important to have because it allows you to deal with the images more easily. At the end of the video, you will get the information about how to use Docker, just a small overview while we install it. Let's see how we install the Linux engine. So basically you have the Docker engine community edition. You go all the way to the bottom of the page and then you get that link for Ubuntu. And then there's a lot of information. So installing whole version, we don't have to deal with that. So we go with the installing using a repository. It's the easiest way I found to do the installation. The first thing that we do is to install all the requirements. I will skip the apt-get update, which will update the catalog of software that we have on our machine because I did it already on that machine yesterday. So I'll just go and install all the required component. Would that include apt with HTTPS, which is probably there, the root certificate, curl to be able to make a call. I had to install it yesterday. You have the new private key agent and the software properties comment. So that's pretty much all, and it's installed already. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a curl which will download the repository key and will add it as a new key. That's good. And the first part here is the curl which run as my current user, and the result is piped into a sudo command which will make the add of the key. So fine. Then I can also check if the key is already installed, and we have to check that the end number is CD88. That's the case, so it's already installed. So we'll go there, and we have here the add apt repository, which will add a repository. Repository is a catalog for the software, so we have a copy on the repository. When we do apt-get update, it gets the information from the repo and create a local catalog. So once we have the catalog locally, we can do install of software. So that will add the repository based on the platform, which is AMD 64 for 64-bit in Linux, and LSB release will be the kind of LS, just to make sure, to show you how it works. LSB release, if we check at the command, -CS, so that should be something like focal, which is the release for Ubuntu 20.04. So let's go with the command. We'll add the repository. And as we add the repository since Ubuntu 20.04, it also made the apt-get update automatically for you. So that's fine. In fact, this step here for Ubuntu 20.04 is not necessary. It has been done already for us. So we just need to install the Docker engine, the command line interface, and the container.io, which is the component that Docker runs. So let's just confirm. Okay. The rest of the instructions are for installing a specific version of Docker, but we also have a nice part here where we test our installation to make Docker run Hello World. We'll just wait a little bit, cut some space in the video. Now that we're done, we have all those packages installed. We can now run the command to test the Docker. So it's sudo, because at that point it's only root that can run the Docker command, Docker run Hello World. So there's basically an image that is called Hello World that just do a little bit of process and then stop. So Docker run will download it and make it run, and once it's finished, we'll just stop. So the command just download the image and run it. And the image only said hello from Docker, so it's a basic message to test your installation. At that point, I can list the image that exists. So from my standard user, only root can do it. So I got error connecting. Now I can do it with sudo. It works, but there's no image running. To have image that are stopped, to be able to list them, I have to add docker ps -as, which mean anything, even if it's stopped. So the image run and stopped 32 seconds ago. Now, if I want to run it again, I'm going to do docker start, and I will include either the container ID here, or I can also use the name, Lovingenstein. Quite nice. So it run, but I don't have any logs yet because I did not tell the system to stay attached. So it only start and the log just stayed in the image itself. But I can go, if I check with the docker ps, I see that it exited 17 seconds ago. So basically it ran the image another time. So I can do docker ps, I can do docker start, stop if it's running and I want to kill it. I can also do docker rm to remove it, but I will keep it for later because now what I want to do is continue the installation and set up the user access. Let's talk about the user access. So we have a lot of information about how to install it from package, and most users, as they see it work, stop there, and that's a mistake because what you want to do is to continue to the end and check out the post-installation steps. Those are quite important because you want to manage Docker as a non-root user. Instead to add the group Docker, we can try to add it, but it's useless because in fact the group has been added already while we did the install. What we want to do then is to add our user, our current user, to the group. But if I make groups, I don't see it yet. I will see it when I restart my session, when I log out and log in back again, or when I reboot the computer. But I don't want to do it right now. What I want to do is to simply log in again in my console. So I'm going to do change user, switch user to Sitsal, which is my username, and just enter the password, and then I got that username. It's a test username. It's not my real username. It says test VM. And at that point, if I do again the groups, then the Docker groups is present. And that means that I can do Docker PS, which will show me the image. And I can do also Docker RM. And let's say that we take the loving Einstein, Control-Shift-C, Control-Shift-V. So we did remove the Einstein. And at that point, if I do again Docker PS, everything, there's no more images. And it means that I can make Docker run again. And it will run again the Docker, the hello world. But this time it did not download the image because it's already downloaded locally. So we'll still scan the image, and this time it took another name because it's a new instance. So every time you create a new instance, it gives a name. But it's not enough yet. So we got a good start. Sometime you may want to check the Docker system control. I think it's already set up to restart, so you can do it if you want, but I think it's already part of the installation. So by precaution, we'll just run it. And what it does is that it enables the system control to start containerd and Docker service, so we can use the command line to work with Docker. Storage engine, login driver, we don't have needs for that in the development setup. So unless you're using some servers, we'll check. Okay. What's left to do is to install DockerCompose. DockerCompose help us manage our Docker. So Docker by itself makes a run, start, stop, but it does not update the image. If you want to update the image, or if you want to connect the image together with the same network and have some name resolution between the image, you need to go with DockerCompose, which will assemble a set of Docker images in their home network and will let collaborate together to make a full system. It will also help you update your image. We'll check out the DockerCompose and we'll install it. And for Mac, it's already installed in Docker Desktop for Windows 2. But for Linux, there's a command to run. So what is this command? Sudo curl. So it's going to download something. It's going to download something which is using uname.s. uname-s is Linux, so the system. And uname-m is for the architecture. x86 64-bit, so that's fine. And it will download it in userlib. So that's fine. Missing a S. So we'll just download that. It's pretty short. And the next step will be to make it executable. Fair. And then we probably have one last step, which is to make a soft link between the DockerCompose that we downloaded under user local bin and to make a short link under user bin, which is a place available in the standard path. So good. I'm just curious. I'm curious about if it will find it. Which DockerCompose, so it finds that the DockerCompose is a link to user local bin DockerCompose. Now, does it work actually? So we run DockerCompose --version. And that's it. DockerCompose is running. So at that point, you have everything required to run any Docker that can bundle with JHipster. That's all for this video. I hope you enjoy it. If you enjoyed the video and you find it useful for you, please hit the like button. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you will receive update when new video comes online. I wish you well and have fun with Docker.